Good evening and welcome to the second scenario of Over the Alps we're going to start today. We finished a case of the Chateau Collie. I very much liked it, and I'm curious how different the new scenario will be. So let's dive right in. Porrentruy. Newspaper. Switzerland closes borders to refugees. Under pressure from Germany, Switzerland will no longer offer sanctuary to refugees without a visa. Since 1933, the small Alpine country has taken in thousands of political refugees, though those seeking asylum due to their race or religion were turned away. Today, all refugees at the Swiss border are being told that the lifeboat is full. Although this decision is sure to meet with strong criticism, Switzerland has taken in more refugees from Germany than any other European nation. Dearest Aubrey, I hope you know what you're doing. First of all, this unfathomable business with postcards. Invisible ink? Really? Second of all, this assignment. We got new stamps on the left. Curious what they will turn out to be. I assume you and Control have already made up your minds. But I'm still making up mine about which of you to blame. My work in Paris was progressing smoothly. I'm fairly sure I can trust you, Aubrey. I am a manipulative British agent. I'm fairly sure I can trust you, Aubrey. It's Control that I'm worried about. Hold that thought. Here I am at the Swiss border. Goodbye, France. At least Bern is, by all accounts, a relatively civilized city. Act 1. A trail of banknotes. Switzerland so far, Aubrey. Quite hilly, quite chilly. I had hoped to take more time to appreciate the landscape, but Control has given me a reading assignment. I was told it's to be completed before I reach my next stop. Would have preferred a little more time to prepare, to tell the truth. But I've done as much as I can with the time I have. I read and reread the dossier until my eyes hurt. Not yet sure why I need to know so much about the upcoming Grand Prix in Bern. Don't worry, Aubrey. I'll spare you the details about the tire grip and inside lines. There's been some juicy controversy, I suppose. A British fellow turned traitor and joined the German team, seduced by the faster cars. And the German hotshot named Fischer has been involved in a number of minor scandals. The number is 17. Anyway, must dash, Alps. Homework to do. In German it's called Bild, but I shall be patriotically referring to it by its French name, Bien. I'll try to go with the fox as much as I can. Even the prettiest towns have their secrets, of course. I should keep an eye out for trouble. I enjoyed my time in Paris, but I do worry it hasn't made me complacent. We're pulling into the station now. Apparently, I'm to meet my handler in a barber shop near the town square. Wait. Am I Louisa? I think I'm Louisa. That's exciting. I was clearly not a hidey-hole designed with female spies in mind. Still, it beats the time I had to bluff my way into a gentleman's club in Camden. Here we are, mustache. Why are we driving backwards? How's this for some proper espionage, Aubrey? I was on my way to meet my handler when I realized there was someone on my tail. A sleek black car pulled up in a quiet side street. Inside, I snatched a glimpse of a pair of glittering eyes following my every move. I needed to confirm my suspicions. I took a meandering route, doubling back on myself twice. I saw the same car several times, gliding at a snail's pace. Eventually, I stopped and waited. Sure enough, I pulled up across the street, engine idling. Make no mistake, Aubrey, I was being followed. I slipped into a convenient patch of shadow. I am now a rogue. I love a good skulk, Aubrey. I behind some bins. My nemesis, a lurking silhouette in the front seat. A veritable skulk off. I sneaked around behind the car and slashed one of the rear tires. I keep a small knife in the heel of my boot for purposes just as this. I returned to my skulking place. After a short while, the engine started up. The vehicle lurched and I heard a woman's voice launch into a stream of colorful German curses. I peeked my head out and watched. A slim, blonde woman in a fashionable coat stepped from the car and walked around to inspect the damage, shaking her head. When she spotted the slashed tire, she actually laughed. I scurried back down my alleyway. Whoever that was, Aubrey, she won't be following me by car anytime soon. A bell jangled merrily above the door. It was Friday afternoon, but the barber shop was empty and silent. A man sat behind the counter, smoking and looking out of the window. "We're closed," he said brusquely, a French accent. I was woken this morning by Swan song. My handler carefully closed the shutters. They sing for the last days of summer. I studied the dossier thoroughly, but I still don't know why I'm here. Operation Swansong, said the Frenchman. Not a man to waste words. So many code names in our line of work, Aubrey. Usually a compound noun for some reason. He took me through the burn operation in detail. Apparently Kurt Fischer, one of the top-ranked stars of the German Grand Prix racing team, is a close personal friend of Adolf Hitler. They met on a hunting trip about 10 years ago. And they still have weekly tennis sessions. Fisher has a bit of a reputation, you see. The man is a liar, a cheat, a womanizer, and a scoundrel. But we wouldn't be hearing about him if he wasn't also catastrophically bad at poker. Predictably, he's found himself neck-deep in debt. To pay his debts, he's been embezzling from the Motor Association itself. If the Germans discovered this, he'd be ruined. We wouldn't want that, would we? Not when he could prove so very useful to us. So we're going to blackmail him, offer to pay off his debts, and turn him into an asset. My handler sat back and stepped out his cigarette. Here. He placed a brown leather briefcase in front of me. Its bronze clasp was engraved with the image of an old-fashioned galleon, sails to the wind. I rolled my eyes and waited for him to explain. 100,000 Swiss francs, he said. Enough to pay off all of Fisher's debts. And enough to buy a couple of nice Alpine chalets, Aubrey. The Frenchman's clear kit of stripped paint. To be used with discretion, I want most of it back, if possible. A fortune. Control really wants Fisher in his pocket. I took the briefcase. It had a satisfying weight to it. We've been in talks with Fisher for months, said the Frenchman. Until now he's only been toying with the idea of treason, but we think he's finally ready to flip. Before I left, I told my handler about the woman I'd spotted following me through the city. Worrying. He lit another cigarette. Any idea who it was? I can't say I got a good look at her. At least you shook them off before you blew our whole operation here. He stabbed his cigarette into the ashtray as though it had offended him. Good luck in Bern, Miss Taylor. Okay, first choice. Road-wise. We can go by train or by bus. I'd say train is more anonymous. Darling Aubrey, these electric trains are glorious marvels of engineering. I kept a close eye on the cash-stuffed briefcase. Can never be too careful. Fortunately, everyone on the train behaved themselves. It felt like I reached Switzerland's capital in no time at all. A long day. I was about ready for bed. My hotel overlooks the Kornhausplatz, a tourist-cramped plaza in the old city. As I hurried there, I saw shadows of black cars at every street corner. I had arrived at the Schweizer Bär, the same hotel that our friend Kurt Fischer was staying in for Sunday's Grand Prix. Even better, my handler had booked me into the room next to his. First thing I did was press an ear against the wall. I was in luck. The walls were very thin. I could hear Fisher shuffling around. The scratchy murmur of the radio. The pop of a cork? After 5 minutes, Fisher swore loudly in German and turned the radio off. The door slammed. While he was out, I picked his lock. Amazing what you can do with a hairpin, Aubrey. Should be standard issue. Fisher didn't have much in his room. Spare clothing, assorted hair tonics. There was a safe under the bed, but I couldn't crack it. Under a loose floorboard, I found a wad of documents, newspaper clippings, bills, and a letter in Russian. Unfortunately, I didn't speak it. I stuffed it into a pocket for later examination. I left the room, planning to bump into Fisher at the hotel bar. Going by his reputation, I judged that he was not a man to resist a hotel bar. I was right, of course. He burst into the bar like a hurricane, laughing, joking, clapping people on the back. When he spotted me, he drifted over like a moth to flame. He was shockingly handsome, Aubrey. It really took my breath away for a moment. And what would the lady like to drink? Whatever the gentleman would like to give me. Fisher shrugged and ordered me a wine. Business before pleasure, Aubrey. I sipped my drink and told him why I was really in Bern. I could help him pay the debt. He stared at me in shock, then glanced conspiratorially around the bar. Meet me outside in 20 minutes, he muttered, by the fountain. Unconvincingly casual, he finished his drink and left the bar. Splash. Kornersplatz is famous for a particularly grotesque fountain known as the Child Eater of Bern. It features a large, colorful statue of a storybook ogre, busy cramming screaming children into its oversized maw. This was where I found Fisher waiting for me, smoking a cigarette. The only indication of nervousness was the relentless tap-tap-tap of his foot. What a wild thing to find in such a lovely place. A pleasure to meet you too, Fräulein. Fisher actually winked. I showed him the Russian letter I'd found in his room. What's this? That rattled him, Aubrey. Did you break into my room? I can't discuss that now. Not here. He tried to change the subject. I have a document showing the map coordinates of secret factories across Germany. Tanks, munitions, planes. Would that be of interest? I waved the Russian letter in his face and told him not to change the subject. But of course it wasn't to be so easy. I have a perfectly good explanation, but I can't tell you out here. Fisher took a drag from his cigarette, his eyes haunted. Tomorrow there's a pre-race party aboard the yacht on the Hohensee. Care to accompany me? I suspect he was just buying time, Aubrey. I'd caught him off guard. But I wasn't in a position to make demands. I don't have a formal invitation for you, but you're a spy. You'll figure it out. Fisher smiled. See you tomorrow. Had trouble sleeping last night, Aubrey. I found myself obsessing over a single question. What was the significance of the Russian letter? In the cold light of the Swiss sun, last night's subterfuge seems like a surreal dream. But the evening is almost here, and it's time to go. Wish me luck. Before the party began, I snuck aboard at the dogs. My dearest Aubrey, I arrived at the pier in the early afternoon. A horde of burly stevedores were coordinating with a fussy-looking waiter to load the yard with industrial quantities of wine and canapes. I offered one of the stevedores 100 Swiss francs to help me sneak aboard. I took a little cash from the briefcase. I'm sure Control won't miss it. He put me into a crate marked fragile, and his friends carried me onto the yacht as comfortably as though I was riding a palanquin. I hid in the hold until I was absolutely sure the coast was clear. Stepping above deck, I grabbed a drink from the tray of a passing waiter and did my best to blend in. Newspaper. Bern prepares for a Grand Prix. Switzerland's capital is gripped with tension today as it anticipates the Grand Prix race occurring this weekend. The racers will be competing on the Bremgarten circuit, and thousands of motor enthusiasts have arrived in the city to witness the event. The track is notorious as one of the most dangerous in Europe, particularly in the rain, with deadly twists and turns that catch even experienced drivers off guard. Fireworks! The champagne bubbled, the wine flowed. I'm not sure what verb is appropriate for the fondue. Glooped? The party was a whirl of unfamiliar faces. I couldn't spot Fisher among them. I made a circuit of the boat, scanning the crowd. No luck. As I searched, I was accosted by an Italian race car driver in a state of some excitement. He grabbed at my hands, shouting and encouraging me to dance. His name was Cornelio, if I remembered the Grand Prix dossier correctly, an eccentric millionaire driving a car of his own design. I extricated myself as politely as I could. I laughed drunkenly, brushed some imaginary dust off my shoulders, and stumbled away, knocking over a pint of fancy chocolates. The other attendees, much less far gone, murmured to each other in consternation. That's when I saw her. The blonde woman who had been following me in Bienne. She was here, smiling, simpering, chatting to a chiseled young man with the look of a race car driver. She flashed me a look. Our eyes met. Her smile widened. She wasn't worth the trouble. I decided to avoid her. When I looked back, she was gone. I never thought I would be so glad to see Kurt Fischer's face in a crowd. I was deep in conversation with another driver, boasting, of course. I have no use for helmets, he was proclaiming proudly. My German skull is tough enough on its own, and as for those... At this point, Aubrey, he pulled off a pair of goggles from his breast pocket. Useless things. They won't save a man if the road decides his time has come. Your time has come, Herr Fischer. Time to decide where your loyalties lie. Fisher turned, a devilish grin on his face. Annie, you made it aboard. Well done. He ushered his drinking companion away. Once again, I confronted him about the Russian letter I had discovered in his room. You clearly had a chance to think things over since yesterday. His smile was cold. A letter from a pen pal, nothing more. I cannot work for someone who does not trust me, Annie. It was obvious he was hiding something. I pressed him. After a few pointed questions, he crumpled like old newspaper. I've also been speaking to the Russians about paying off my debts, he admitted. They made a better offer, and they have a seaplane waiting for me at Interlaken. I just need to bring them the documents, and they'll take me to the safety of Moscow. Why invite me to this party at all, then? I wanted your money, Fisher paused, and you're an attractive young woman, Annie. But I see now that you and I could never get along. So you were trying to play us for fools? Fisher nodded. I was hoping to get as much money from the British as I could before I vanished, but I suppose you caught me. Why are you even still here, Herr Fisher? One more race, said Fisher. That's all I wanted. There you have it, Aubrey. I'd finally uncovered the truth. There would be no agreement with Fisher. As the party wound up and the yacht pulled into the docks, I saw Fisher slip into the night, accompanied by a familiar figure, Fräulein Wolf. They were laughing, chatting, intimately close together. I still wanted those documents you mentioned, even if I had to steal them. I followed at a distance. Two Polizei loomed out of the shadows like a pair of tombstones. We've been told a young lady of your description was trespassing at the Grand Prix party. Is this true? I am not sure I can bribe them. It doesn't sound smart. But the other options somehow sound worse. Like kicking them or assuring them they were mistaken. I'm not sure if there's a skill check applied. I assured them that they were mistaken. They were having precisely none of it and wanted to take me in for questioning. Short on options, I fled down a side alley. Rather than muddy my dress, I scurried across the rooftops. A complication. Curse this damp country, Aubrey. The tiles were slick from the fog, and my foot slid out from under me as I tried to jump from one rooftop to another. A lesser woman could have done herself a mischief, Aubrey, but not me. I hippity-hopped over the wet tiles, got my skidding feet back under control, and bowed to the moon with a flourish. I clambered over Burn's steeply sloping rooftops. Police swept the streets below with torches, shouting to each other, but I was above their reach. When I finally arrived back at my hotel room, I was exhausted. I listened at the wall, but Fisher's room was silent. Had he and Wolf given me the slip? I picked Fisher's lock and waited in his room. I had already one more, ready to be deployed. Unfortunately, I quite forgot about it when Wolf produced a Mauser pistol from her belt. She motioned for Fisher to sit on the bed. "You will tell me everything, Herr Fisher," she said, her gun wavering between the two of us. She went through the standard interrogation routine. He told her everything, his embezzlements, his debts, my identity. He even told her about his secret file full of German military coordinates. Wolf ordered Fisher to open his safe. Pause as she examined the contents. "Tut tut, Herr Fisher," she said. A click as she turned off her safety catch. This could harm Germany a great deal if it fell into the wrong hands. I could see that Wolf had murder on her mind. She leveled her pistol at Fisher. "Back home we will cast you as a true Nazi patriot and blame the Jews for your assassination. At least your reputation will be salvaged, Herr Fisher." "You kill him if you like, but leave me out of it." "I'd spare you if I could," said Wolf, "but I can't risk leaving a witness. You're a professional, you understand." Her gun swung between the two of us. I waited until it was pointed at Fisher and... I snatched the letter opener from Fisher's desk and hurled it. I must confess, I'd had visions of the blade sticking in her eye. In the event, the handle just bounced off her head, making her stagger. Fisher took advantage of her distraction. Quick as an adder, he surged from his seat and knocked the gun from her hand. While she scrabbled to retrieve it, he grabbed the manila folder and fled. Wolf rushed after him, screaming curses in German. I took a shortcut through the back alleys. Unfortunately, it was too trusting of the map of Bern I'd been provided. As I ran through the alleys, it became clear I was lost. In situations like these, Aubrey, the only option is to ask a stranger. I put on my best impression of a day's tourist and asked for directions to the Grand Prix. The young gentleman was more than happy to help. The streets were seething with rain. I was drenched before I'd taken a dozen steps. Rather than trail along at Fisher's heels, I decided to try and beat him to the Grand Prix. That's where he was headed, Aubrey, make no mistake. Fortunately, the dossier had come with a map of Bern. I took a shortcut through the old city's narrow alleyways. For the good of the country, I had to get my hands on Fisher's file. The plan was a good one, it might even have worked, but there was a market that day and the alleys were crammed with stalls and Sunday shoppers. It was a giant obstacle course. I vaulted over a stall, sending oranges rolling in all directions. Of course I slipped on one of them and skidded down the road, where I knocked over an old man on a ladder. I fell face first into a puddle. I tripped over a terrified goat, which promptly ran loose from its master, knocking a pail of milk directly onto my head. I can assure you, Aubrey, it was not remotely funny. A man's life was at stake. By the time I reached the Grand Prix, I was filthy and exhausted. My hair was drenched with goat milk. Bremgarten. Newspaper. The race is on. Today the city of Bern is aflame with Grand Prix fever. The race will begin in the early hours of the morning in what is expected to be wet conditions. Timothy Sidhurst of Britain and Ruprecht Chamisso of Germany are the favorites for the top spot, though King of the Mountain Kurt Fischer may upset the apple cart once again. The circuit starts at Bremgarten, a little town swallowed by the expanding borders of Bern long ago. It had been utterly transformed for the Grand Prix. With flags rippled above crowded stands. Sleek, cigar-shaped race cars were lined up at the start line, rain drumming their hoods. Thanks to the dossier, I was able to recognize the cars and the man who drove them. Top seat Ruprecht Chamisso, smoking a cigarette behind his Munich Meteor. Tim Sidhurst arguing with his mechanics. Fischer was fighting off fans and autograph hunters. He shoved his way to his race car, ignoring the rebukes of his team, and jumped into the driver's seat. I slid past the curtain and tried to blend in with the engineers. Of course, I failed. None of the Grand Prix teams employed female engineers. I stood out like a sore thumb. A race official grabbed my arm. Where do you think you're going? I warned him that an assassin was planning to end Kurt Fischer's life. He seemed to think I was just another fan driven to obsession by Fischer's fame and good looks. He called over a friend and the two of them dragged me away. After a moment I spotted Wolf approaching Fischer's car and shaking off an official. She was holding her gun in the pocket of her coat. I shouted a warning. Fischer shouted with alarm when he saw the Fräulein looming toward him through the rain haze. With no time to spare, he slammed his foot on the accelerator and roared across the line, drenching Wolf with a scythe of tire spray. The crowd gasped. He jumped the gun. In the ensuing chaos, the man dragging me off loosened their grips. I slipped free and hid behind a column of tires. The officials briefly consulted with each other. A decision was reached. Fischer was disqualified, but the race would go on. If he knew he was disqualified, Fischer would have nothing to gain by sticking to the circuit. I expected him to go off track and flee the city. When that happened, I'd need to be right behind him, or I'd lose him for good. I made my way over to Cornelius' car. He looked up mournfully from his sick bucket. Your manager wants to speak with you. He nodded and trudged away. As soon as his back was turned, I slipped into the driving seat. As I placed my hands on the wheel, someone slid in behind me. A gun barrel pressed into my spine. Make no fuss, said Fräulein Wolf. Just drive. I stared down at the controls. The dossier flashed through my mind. I put the car into gear. The engine growled. The green flag flew. The gun shot. Tires squealed, struggling to grip the rain-slicked asphalt. He roared from the start line alongside the other cars. The Grand Prix had begun, and I'd found myself taking part. The circuit. And we were off Aubrey. It was just like racing down the narrow country lanes in Cornwall, except 10 times louder, deadlier, faster, and the Fräulein was brandishing her Mauser as though she fully intended to use it. I told her to stop being silly. But the elephant bellow of the engine ate up my words completely. Wolf was shouting something back at me. Whatever it was, it probably wouldn't have helped. The car was shuddering beneath us, as though every single part of the chassis wanted to fling itself in a different direction. I wasn't going to let Fisher get away. Unfortunately, the race cars had formed a surprisingly orderly queue as we whizzled around the circuit. Fisher was leading the pack, and there were only a couple of cars between me and him. I recognized the one right in front of me, hogging the road. Timothy Sidhurst, the British driver. I got ahead of him around the next turn, but only for a moment. The very next corner curved left again, and Sidhurst was in the perfect position for it. He zoomed neatly ahead of us. We were stuck on a long stretch of straight road. Inch by painful inch, I pulled alongside him. He was so close I could see the muscles scrumming around his clenched jaw. At the next turn, I would have him. We approached a bend in the circuit. It was a long, lazy, sweeping turn, like a concrete river. I let Sidhurst take the inside line while I drifted to the outer edge. A mistake. He was gone. A silver bullet. I was out of time and out of patience. The time for subtlety was over. Sidhurst had a dozen more laps to think about. I just wanted to get ahead once. I slammed my foot down, not caring about the scream of my tires, not caring about the stench of burning rubber. I whooped as we surged smoothly ahead. But it wasn't time to celebrate yet, Aubrey. Just one car left between me and Fisher. Rupesh Chamiso, the odds-on favorite. A sharp turn was coming up. Chamiso had shifted to the far side of the road, leaving one obvious path straight past him. Suspecting a trap, I moved a little to the outside too. After that turn came another, twisting sharply in the opposite direction. I hedged my bets again, sticking to the outer edge of the road. I ran around the outer edge, slow as molasses. Chamiso switched to the inside, put his foot down, and left me behind. A flash of silver in my mirror caught my eye. Apparently Sidhurst wasn't willing to give up so easily either. He was right behind us, smoothly pulling out to overtake. I wove back and forth to block him from getting ahead. My tires shrieked. Something in my car did an ominous clank, but Sidhurst was stymied. He fell back. The stewards started waving red flags at me and gestured at me to pull over. I gave them a little wave as I passed them by. It took a little bit of fancy driving, but I caught up with Chamiso once again. Imagine this, Aubrey. A clear stretch of winding road. My final obstacle before Fisher. A battle of wills. Chamiso, I was coming to realize, wasn't reckless like Sidhurst. He drove like a Swiss clock. Perfect. Precise. I waited for my chance. It's like dueling. You probe for the gap in their defenses, and then you strike like a viper. But Chamiso was impenetrable. Every time I spotted a gap and got ready to zoom ahead, his car would suddenly be in front of mine. It was grueling, Aubrey. Every time I tried to overtake, he'd find some perfect angle and pull even further ahead. I slammed my foot to the metal and put on a burst of speed. Our sudden attack was expertly parried. Chamiso had left us no room to get past, and I found myself weaving back and forth, completely blocked. Just shoot him, I urged Wolf. Best idea you've had all day, said Wolf. closing one eye and cracking off a trio of shots. 3 neat bullet holes appeared in Chamiso's windshield. He pulled over immediately, apparently unwilling to risk taking a bullet for the sake of the Grand Prix, and we roared past. The wonders of cheating, Aubrey. Finally, we were closing in on Fisher. Wolf raised her Mauser. There were several sharp cracks and sparks flew as bullet holes dotted Fisher's car. I yelled once again at Wolf to put the gun away, but of course she ignored me. Luckily, she seemed to have run out of ammunition. As Wolf struggled to reload her pistol, Fisher swung around the next bend, a hairpin turn. If I took the inside, perhaps I could overtake? No such luck, of course. The turn was far too difficult. My car swung around the bend wildly, almost spinning out, and Fisher pulled well ahead. Not a fan of this race. Around the next corner, we came upon a scene of devastation. Fisher had smashed straight through a wooden barrier and vanished down a side road, going off track. Along the way, he'd apparently knocked over a race marshal. The poor man was lying in a pool of blood by the roadside. There, there's a door nail, Aubrey. It was twisted in a way that left little doubt. A police car turned the corner, lights flashing, bells jangling. "Get us out of here," muttered Wolf, waving her gun. Using the police was a moment's work. After all, we were driving a race car. We left them in a cloud of smoke and emasculation. Fisher had taken a road that led straight out of Bern into the surrounding mountains. He was already long gone. "We've lost him," muttered Wolf. "Pull over." She was right. I stopped the car. "Together we can find him, Fräulein Taylor." She stuck her gun away for the first time and stuck out her hand. "Why? So you can shoot him?" "You need to find him as badly as I do. We can work together until we do. After that..." I punched her. Her head snapped back. She slumped against the seat, rubbing her jaw in shock. Behind us, Bern was erupting in a cacophony of ringing bells and wailing sirens. The police would be after us both now. Ahead, the mountains were grand and quiet. The only noise was a distant bellow of the Fisher's engine, a taunting echo on the breeze. I raced into the mountains. Pandemonium at the Grand Prix had followed us. The peaceful mountain air was shattered by the noise of shrill whistles and clanging bells behind us. The police were on our trail. I misclicked, but I outpaced my pursuers. Drove into a barn full of chickens and waited in the clucking darkness for them to overtake me. Once they were gone, I pulled out of the barn and continued on my merry way. Dearest Aubrey, the rain had finally died down, but the dark clouds still threatened overhead. There was only one route Fisher could be following, the long mountain road to Thun. Occasionally, we'd spot a race car's tire track in the mud. I attempted small talk with Fräulein, but she wasn't in the mood. Halfway to Thun, it became clear that the race car was rattling itself to pieces. The stress of the Grand Prix had been hard on it. It was no good. We'd have to stop at Thun. It was a beautiful little sliver of a town, perched between a glittering lake and a backdrop of storybook mountains. By the time we pulled up outside an auto mechanic, the race car was in its death throes. The slightest bump in the road was met with an unpleasant, grating clank. Curtains twitched in the surrounding windows. A gaggle of curious onlookers congregated, muttering and pointing at our battered car. The police is following me. Chaos at the Grand Prix. A pair of mad women stole a car and joined the race. They chased Kurt Fischer off the course entirely, causing him to run down a marshal. Worst of all, I had money riding on Fischer. Francs fluttering on the breeze. After the race was cancelled, spectators spilled out on the track and tried to grab as much as they could. We cleared them off. At least it provides a nice breadcrumb trail for us to follow. Tune is afire with gossip. Apparently, half the town watched as a battered race car on its last legs, while wheels limped into the auto mechanic's garage. No wonder after the treatment that poor machine was put through. Okay, we got 4 police follow stamps. Hi, Eric. Act 2. End of the road. The mechanic was a broad man whose every movement was deliberate. He assessed what remained of the car, wiping his hands solemnly on a rag. That's the race car, he observed finally. I had no intention of repairing the car, of course. The race car was a liability. I told the mechanic he could keep it, and Wolf and I walked away without another word. I led the Fräulein down a side street, hoping to escape the prying eyes of the townfolk. Fischer must have come through too, she said. Perhaps someone spotted him? I was a step ahead of her, of course, but I kept that to myself. I went and had a nice cup of coffee while Wolf ran around conducting random interrogations. It was the perfect time to give her the slip. I slipped away when her back was turned and stole a motorbike from the side of the road, hot-wired in 20 seconds flat. Tune was soon just a smudge in the rearview mirror. My nearly as quiet motorcycle was an unwieldy beast, 20 years old and slow as an ox. Slower, perhaps. If it had been an ox, it would have already been put out of his misery. As I pivoted away from Tune, I heard the familiar roar of a race car behind me. There was no outpacing her Opry. Even in its near-death state, the race car was faster than my hopeless bike. Wolf swerved in front of me, bringing me to an abrupt halt. She opened the door with a reproachful smile. You forgot me, Fräulein Taylor. Can't blame her for trying, Fräulein. She put a hand on her mouth. Off the bike, Fräulein Taylor. I had no choice, Aubrey. I dismounted and let my stolen motorcycle fall in the road. Wolf nodded approvingly. Now get in. Long drive ahead. So this time we are actually playing as a female agent. The engine of the race car bellowed as we sped down to Interlaken. A glimmering lake on one side, breathtaking mountains on the other, but the Fräulein was in no mood to appreciate it. Faster, she insisted, waving her gun, though I was going too fast already. I told her that if we went any faster we'd end up killing ourselves. Or someone else. She seemed to realize the truth of my words. She put the gun away, at least. We were a flash of bullet-shaped crimson, devouring the miles. The picturesque mountains swept past too quickly to appreciate. We turned heads at every single village. It was painful. The police would have no doubt that we were going to Interlaken. I was already planning how best to follow the Fräulein's themes. I need to get a hold of those coordinates. Easier said than done in Aubrey. When we arrived in town, it was hard to avoid noticing the seaplane. It stuck out immediately among the quaint little yards. I think we lost one following stamp. No, there it's back. Our two suspects lingered in tune for longer than they should. The German blonde whizzed around asking about Kurt Fischer. A hunt is on. Maybe if I save his life, Fischer will give me his autograph. Oh, 5 follow stamps. It was easy enough to follow the race car's trail. Every village they'd gone through was still mad with excitement about it. You don't often get cars like that on these backwater roads. It was clear enough where we would find Fischer. His race car was parked outside Interlaken's biggest hotel. Wolf strode up to the concierge, carefully applying her smile. You're such fans of Herr Fischer. Which room is he in? I had to admit she was good. He was wrapped around her finger in moments and told her exactly what she wanted to know. We made our way to room 204. I half expected Wolf to burst in guns blazing, but she paused at the door to eavesdrop. The room's occupants were having an argument. I recognized Fischer's voice, raised in anger. You need me! Without the cipher case, these documents are useless. Comrade Fischer, you do not want to come to Russia. The second voice was male, calm, its accent unplaceable. Switzerland is better for you. I wondered how honest Fischer had been with the Russians. In his shoes, I'd have kept the details to myself. We have a safe house in the forest near Obergorms, said the strangely accented voice. Here, circled on the map. A pause, the gluck-gluck of some expensive spirit. Here's the key. No, take it, I insist. We'll hide you in the mountains until the storm with the British spy blows over. After that, everything happened very quickly, Aubrey. Fräulein Wolf kicked the door open before I could intervene. I had the briefest glimpse. Kurt Fischer in the armchair, a man in round spectacles sitting opposite of him. Then Wolf pointed her gun and shot Fischer directly in the chest. What the fuck? I raised an eyebrow. Bang. One bullet in the heart, Aubrey. Fischer flopped back into his armchair like a stunned trout, his whiskey soaking the carpet. Death to traitors, said Wolf triumphantly. She turned to me and the Russian spy. Against the wall, both of you. I took the chance to assess my Russian competition. He of the mysterious accent. A perfectly normally looking fellow, which I suppose made him an excellent spy. His only distinguishing feature was a pair of gold-framed round spectacles. He had a manila folder in his hand, Fischer's stolen coordinates as suspected. Wolf smiled sadly. You lost, Fräulein Taylor. Accept your death with dignity. My muscles tensed, ready to make for the window, but suddenly... Behind Wolf, Fisher's corpse twitched, moved its arm, slowly removed a pair of goggles from its breast pocket. Lost for words, asked Wolf, unaware of the pantomime unfolding behind her. Fisher stared at the cracked goggles in befuddled wonder. A bullet was lodged in the lens. I put on my best poker face. What is your name? Asked the Fräulein, pointing her gun at the Russian. In Switzerland? Oskar Chocker, the Russian kept his voice level, staring over his shoulder. Behind her, a miraculously living Fisher slowly raised the paperweight. Had to keep her talking, Aubrey. At any moment, she could notice the creaking floorboard, or Fisher's shadow on the wall in front of her. Fräulein, how do you manage to keep your hair looking so good? She turned to me, startled. Is that really what you're... The rest of her answer was abruptly cut off. The crack of the weight hitting her skull made me wince. Fisher bent down and picked up the unconscious Wolf's gun. He pointed it at the Russian and I. Right, he said, looking a little surprised to be alive. Annie, please hand over the briefcase. Oskar, keep your hands in the air. Oskar and I did as instructed. Fisher backed out of the room, gun raised. He slammed the door and locked it behind him. I heard running footsteps as he fled down the corridor. I picked the lock. Oskar watched my efforts with interest. It seems we've been chasing the same wild goose. I ran down the corridor, ignoring him, but Fisher was nowhere to be seen. Outside, we heard the roar of a powerful engine. I watched from the window as Fisher's race car peeled out onto the road once again. He was well and truly gone, Aubrey. I glanced down at the manila folder in Oskar's hand. Fisher's infamous documents, Aubrey. I was sure of it. Oskar took one look at me, then turned and fled. I heard his footsteps rapidly retreating down the hotel corridor. I chased him. I hadn't pursued Fisher across half of Switzerland just to lose that file to the Russians. I followed Oskar down to the lakeside. A motorboat awaited him, with a heavy-set man in a life jacket perched at the wheel. As I rushed down, their boat was already pulling away from the dock. I commandeered a boat of my own. It's quite easy to steal a boat, Aubrey. You just need to untie a knot and ignore the shouting. I chased Oskar and his lackey across the lake. Looked like he was heading to the seaplane. The henchman took careful aim and started taking potshots back at me. Cheeky devil! I just wished I had a gun of my own. Could have ended it much sooner. Finally, the big man seemed to run out of bullets. He hunched over in conversation with his boss as I shot across the water. Soon enough, they reached the seaplane. I gunned the engines and gave chase as the seaplane picked up speed. I tossed the rope, hoping to snag the plane and clamber aboard. It was too much to hope for, Aubrey. The rope fell uselessly into the water. I'd missed my chance. The seaplane lifted off. Oskar Chocker's taking the documents back to Mother Russia. I tilted, up, up, up. Eventually it was just a speck in the sky. Oskar was gone, and he'd taken the documents with him. Back at shore, I found the Fräulein waiting for me. She looked a little woozy. Tammy recovered the documents for Lynn Taylor, she said. When I told her what happened, she nearly collapsed. To tell the truth, I wasn't feeling much better. The files were gone for good, and I suspected that Control was going to use some very hurtful language. We must hunt down Fisher. Wolf looked like she might be sick. Like, somehow we can salvage success from this disaster. She was talking like we were allies, Aubrey. There was no point trying to get rid of her. Wolf is nothing if not persistent. You and I are in this together, Fräulein Taylor, at least until we catch our quarry. I suppose she was right, Aubrey. When we returned to the race car, we found it under surveillance by a team of police. We turned about face and walked quickly in the opposite direction. They were trying to be inconspicuous, bless them. But a few were doing the old hide behind newspaper trick, not subtle at all. Which raised the question, Aubrey, what now? Alright, I think that's enough for today. Thanks for stopping by, Eric and everyone else, and have a good day, and I'll continue on Thursday.